Hello everyone, let's start our part 4. As always, we're gonna start with a story. In the kingdom of your body stands a mighty fortress, the skeleton, its 206 bony guardians, each with name and purpose. From two mighty lesions, the axial skeleton, spine, skull, ribs, guarding the core, and the appendicular skeleton, limb, shoulder, hips, defending the frontiers. Together, they are the marvel of the strength and strategy. Deep within the femur shaft, compact bone stands like a unyielding wall. Microscopic osteon cylindrical tower raised tall. Inside their laminar rings, osteocytes dwell in tiny chambers called lacunae, linked with secret tunnels, canaliculi, to a central where the blood vessels surge. No cell left behind, declares the fortress architect. At the bone ends, the spongy waves, elixir of tuberculi, light yet unbreakable. Between these stratas, red blood marrow hums like a factory, crafting blood cells, hemiopoiesis, while yellow marrow naps, storing energy. Above them, osteoclast and osteoblasts wage an external dance, breaking all bonds, building new, trading calcium like precious currency. But the skeleton's surface tells its own tale. Tuberosities rise like a watchtower for the tendon anchors, foramina arch like gates for nerves and vessels, and condyles clamp as soft platforms where the bones meet. Every groove, every ridge has name and a duty, whispers the fortress scrap. Beyond the bone lies the joints, grand meeting halls where the bones clasp hand. Ligaments bind them like a vows, while the synovial fluid flows like a liquid silk, nourishing the hyaline cartilage that shields their surface. When muscle contracts, these joints moves, a splinter knee bending, a pianist finger dancing, all guided by the tendon and cushionated by menisci. Can you name the guardians of this living fortress? Test your mastery with the MCQs on the skeleton and joints, where every answer unlocks a secret of your body's timeless architecture. Now let's move to question number 44. In which of the following bone structures do osteocytes live? Option A, osteon. Option B, canaliculi. Option C, lacunae. Option D, lamellae. And the answer is option C, lacunae. Now let's move to question number 45. What is a trochanter? Option A, part of femur. Option B, a feature of the pelvis. Option C, a projection that forms the part of an articulation. Option D, a groove in which lies a tendon. And the answer is option A, part of femur. Now let's move to question number 46. Which of the following describes the movements known as pronation and supination? Option A, flexing of arm with respect to the forearm around the elbow. Option B, the swelling of the foot to the medial and lateral direction. Option C, the twisting of the wrist while the elbow is held in motionless. Option D, rotation at shoulder that causes the arm to describe a cone shape. And the answer is option C, the twisting of wrist while the elbow is held motionless. Now let's move to question number 47. Which one of the following is a bone that is embedded within a tendon? Option A, sphenoid. Option B, hyoid. Option C, ethmoid. Option D, sesamoid. And answer is option D, sesamoid. Now let's move to question number 48. Which bone of the head has a synovial joint? Option A, the sphenoid. Option B, maxilla. Option C, the mandible. Option D, the hyoid. And the answer is option C, the mandible. Now let's move to question number 49. What are the bones of the fingers known as? Option A, short bones. Option B, metacarpals. Option C, carpals. Option D, phalanges. And the answer is option D, phalanges. Now let's move to question number 50. Which of the following comprise 7 bones? Option A, cervical vertebra. Option B, carpals. Option C, cranial bones. Option D, lumbar vertebra. And the answer is option A, cervical vertebra. Now let's move to question number 51. Which term below refers to depression in a bone? Option A, tuberosity. Option B, fossa. Option C, tubercle. Option D, condyle. And the answer is option B, fossa. Now let's move to question number 52. Where are blood vessels in compact bone found? Option A, in the canaliculi. Option B, in the periosteum. Option C, in the lacunae. Option D, in the central canal. And the answer is option D, in the central canal. Now let's move to question number 53. One of the following list contains only bones in the appendicular skeleton. Which one? Option A, patella, ethmoid, femur, coccyx, tibia. Option B, clavicle, fibula, metatarsal, phalange, radius. Option C, humerus, scapula, occipital, metacarpal, sternum. Option D, ulna, radius, phalange, mandible, coccyx. And answer is option B, clavicle, fibula, metatarsal, phalange, radius. Now let's move to question number 54. Where is the epiphyseal plate of the bone located? Option A, in the diaphysis. Option B, between the diaphysis and the epiphysis. Option C, in the epiphysis. Option D, in the medullary canal. And answer is option B, between the diaphysis and epiphysis. Now let's move to question number 55. Which of the following is a projection from a bone surface? Option A fossa. Option B, fissure. Option C, foramen. Option D, facet. And answer is option D, facet. Now let's move to question number 56. The appendicular skeleton includes all of the following except one. Which one? Option A, the pelvic girdle. Option B, the thoracic cage. Option C, the phalanx. Option D, the lower limbs. And the answer is option B, the thoracic cage. Now let's move to question number 57. Which of the following is an example of synovial joint? The joint between the option A, the tibia. Option B, the sternum and the rib number 1. Option C, the thoracic vertebra 4 and 5. Option D, proximal end of the radius and ulna. And answer is option D, the proximal end of the radius and ulna. Now let's move to question number 58. The synovial joint have all of the following features except one. Which one? Option A, are surrounded by the articular capsule. Option B, have synovial fluid filling the space between the articulating bones. Option C, have synovial membrane covering the articulating bone surface. Option D, are supported by reinforcing ligaments. And the answer is option C, have synovial membrane covering the articulating bone surface. Now let's move to question number 59. Articulating bones are joined by option A, aponeurosis. Option B, tendon. Option C, fasciculi. Option D, ligaments. And the answer is option B, ligaments. Now let's move to question number 60. The axial skeleton group together with sets of bone. Option A, the arms and hand, legs and feet, shoulder girdle, pelvic girdle. Option B, the head, shoulder girdle, arms and hands. Option C, the thoracic cage, vertebral column, shoulder girdle, pelvic girdle and the skull and the facial bone. Option B, the bones of the skull and faces, thoracic cage and vertebral column. And the answer is option D, the bone of the skull and the face, thoracic cage and vertebral column. Now let's move to question number 61. How do the synovial joint differ from the other type of bone articulation? Option A, they have a joint cavity. Option B, the bone are joined by fibrous tissue. Option C, the articulating bones are joined by cartilage. Option D, the articulating bone surface are covered by tendon. And the answer is option A, they have a joint cavity. Now let's move to question number 62. The appendicular skeleton group together with sets of bone. Option A, the arm and the hands, the leg and the feet, shoulder girdle and pelvic girdle. Option B, the head, shoulder girdle, arms and hands. Option C, the thoracic cage, vertebral column, shoulder girdle, the pelvic girdle, skull and the facial bones. Option D, the bone of the skull and face, thoracic cage and vertebral column. And the answer is option A, the arm and the hands, the leg and the feet, shoulder girdle and pelvic girdle. Now let's move to question number 63. The synovial joints differ from other type of joints between bone in body because option A, they are immovable. Option B, they are slightly movable. Option C, the bone are the joined by cartilage. Option D, the end of the articulating bones are covered by hyaline cartilage. And the answer is option D, the end of the articulating bones are covered by hyaline cartilage. Now let's move to question number 64. Which of the following describes what an epiphysis is? Option A, the shaft of the long bone. Option B, the line that separates the shaft from the end of the bone. Option C, the membrane that surrounds a bone. Option D, the end of a long bone. And the answer is option D, the end of a long bone. Now let's move to question number 65. To what does the term osteon refers in bone? Option A, the bone cells, osteocytes in lacunae. Option B, a small rounded projection on a bone. Option C, concentric cylinders of calcified bone matrix. Option D, the membrane covering the outside of the bone. And the answer is option C, the concentric cylinder of the calcified bone matrix. Now let's move to question number 66. Blood cell formation, hemiopoiesis, occurs in which of the following structure? Option A, red marrow. Option B, yellow marrow. Option C, medullary cavity. Option D, epiphyseal plate. And the answer is option A, red marrow. Now let's move to question number 67. Where does the increase in length of the long bone take place? At the option A, diaphysis ossification centers. Option B, epiphyseal plate. Option C, cartilaginous plate. Option D, medullary canal. And the answer is option B, epiphyseal plate. Now let's move to question number 68. The human skeleton consists of which of the following? Option A, pelvic girdle, the hip girdle, bone of the limbs. Option B, axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. Option C, cranial bone, thoracic cage, the two girdles and the lower bones. Option B, appendicular skeletons, skull bones and the vertebral skeleton. And the answer is option B, the axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. Now let's move to question number 69. What is the true of synovial joint? They, option A, are also known as amphiarthrosis. Option B, all have an articular disc to aid shock absorption. Option C, have a fluid-filled space between the articulating bone. Option D, have articulating bone held together by cartilage. And answer is option C, have a fluid-filled space between the articulating bone. Now let's move to question number 70. The tibia articulates distally with which one of the following? Option A, tarsals. Option B, metatarsal. Option C, phalanx. Option D, femur. And the answer is option A, tarsal. Now let's move to question number 71. Which of the following is an amphiarthrotic joint? Option A, symphysis pubis. Option B, suture in the skull. Option C, elbow. Option D, shoulder. And the answer is option A, symphysis pubis. Now let's move to question number 72. Where are the red marrow be found in the adult? Option A, in the pelvis, sternum, ribs. Option B, at the epiphyseal end of the long bones such as radius, ulna, tibia. Option C, in the pelvis, sternum, ribs and the proximal end of the humerus and femur. Option D, in the medullary cavity of the long bones. And the answer is option B, in the pelvis, sternum, ribs and the proximal end of the humerus and femur. Now let's move to question number 73. How many bones in total are proximal to the ankles and counted as being in the lower limb? Option A, 4. Option B, 6. Option C, 8. Option D, 12. And the answer is option C, 8. Now let's move to question number 74. Which list has correct number of vertebrae for an adult? Option A, 7 cervical, 5 lumbar, 12 thoracic, 1 coccyx, 1 sacrum. Option D, 5 cervical, 7 lumbar, 12 thoracic, 4 coccyx, 5 sacrum. Option C, 5 cervical, 7 lumbar, 10 thoracic, 1 coccyx, 5 sacrum. Option D, 7 cervical, 5 lumbar, 10 thoracic, 4 coccyx, 1 sacrum. And the answer is option A, 7 cervical, 5 lumbar, 12 thoracic, 1 coccyx, 1 sacrum. Now let's move to question number 75. What is the significance of lumbar curve of the spine? Option A, it allows the torso to twist about a vertical axis. Option B, it places the body center of gravity above the feet to enable a standing posture. Option C, it places the head center of gravity above the atlas vertebra so that the head may be held level. Option D, it allows the torso to bend forward to pick up the object from the ground. And the answer is option B, it places the body center of gravity above the feet to enable standing posture. Now let's move to question number 76. Which of the following joint is a synovial joint? Option A, intervertebral joint. Option B, the tibiofibular joint. Option C, the skull sutures. Option D, carpo-metacarpal joints. And the answer is option D, carpo-metacarpal joints. Now let's move to question number 77. What is the physical functions performed by synovial joint? Option A, it forms a film that keeps the articulating surface of the bone from touching. Option B, it provides nutrients to the cells in cartilage and remove their waste. Option C, it removes the heat generated by friction when the joint is in continuous use. Option D, it lubricates the movement of articulating bone and distributes pressure evenly across the joint. And the answer is Option D, it lubricates the movement of the articulating bone and distribute the pressure evenly across the joint. Now let's move to question number 78. What is the biological function performed by synovial fluid? Option A, it forms a film that keeps the articulating surface of the bone from touching. Option B, it provides nutrients to the cell in cartilage and remove their waste. Option C, it removes heat generated by friction when the joint is in the continuous use. Option D, it lubricates the movement of articulating bone and distribute the pressure evenly across the joint. And the answer is option B, it provides nutrients to the cell in cartilage and remove their waste. So that's all for today. If you have any doubts, please do mention in the comment box. I'll be back with next topic, that's muscles, in the next video. Wait till then. Bye bye. Thank you.